So as you may have guessed, today as we continue our series on indigenous traditions, primal traditions, we are going to go to West Africa and look at some of those traditions. Last week we focused on Native American traditions. You'll remember we talked about connection, right? Connection and place and timelessness. We talked about the profound tradition of connection to the land, to the ancestors, to the energy of creation that is present all around us, as us, and through us in all forms of nature. The rivers, the trees, even the rocks and the mountains. Each has a story, each has a memory, each has a voice. What a beautiful way to think about our world. And I hope you've had time to think about it this week. I think it's just beautiful. We talked about where we today can find and celebrate our own place and our own ability to find the sacred in our lives. And that's what I want to talk about some more today. I want to explore the wisdom of another primal tradition, that of the Yoruba in West Africa. There's much to learn, and Asha spent 3 days looking at it. I've spent a bunch of time looking at it. We actually studied this also in seminary. And it's a beautiful tradition, but the more you look into it, it's kind of like peeling back the layers of an onion. There is just so much to learn and so much to take with us as tools for our own practice. So what I want to do is I want to give you an overview of this tradition, and then I want to focus on one aspect that particularly spoke to me and that I want you to spend the next few days thinking about as you go about your own life. So the Yoruba culture arose among the people of Nigeria, Togo, and Benin in West Africa. Practitioners of the Yoruba religion is also called Ifa. Ifa is a divination scheme, but it also has aspects of this West African tradition. They envision a cosmology, and some of this may sound very familiar because a lot of these elements are just mythic, and they go from people to people to people, and they appear in geographically disparate cultures because they're just ingrained in our DNA, in our primal DNA, which we all share. Anyway, the Ifa envision a cosmology occupied by a supreme creator called Olorun or Oludumare. This deity has no gender because this deity is beyond gender. This deity is beyond time and space, and it cannot be confined in either. The Yoruba envision it as one who occupies the whole extent of the world, the ultimate end of everything. I bet this sounds familiar. Yes, it does. However, Olorun or Oludumare is a distant god and does not become involved in the affairs of those of us down here. That task goes to the Orisha. You heard that in the song that we just heard. The Orisha are the intercessors, the messengers. They've been called angels between the divine and the human realms. As it's envisioned by Yoruba tradition, the essence of Olorun was poured out into the Orisha, who could bring it to us here on earth. The word Orisha consists of two concepts. The first, Ori, is the reflective spark of human consciousness in us. The second, Sha, is the ultimate potential of our consciousness to merge with the divine. I bet this is continuing to sound familiar. So they are the Orisha. They are the intercessors between us and the divine. Now, Orishas are found everywhere. Their number runs from a few dozen to several thousand. They're found in numbers, in colors, in natural elements, in situations, in pieces of clothing. They surround us. They are everywhere. And their presence everywhere, think about this. Just try to conceptualize this for a second. Their presence everywhere creates an ongoing dialogue between us and every element of life around us. Why? Because we are surrounded by these divine sentient beings present in everything. The gift to us is to see the sacred in all things because it's there. Our interaction with the sacred in all things. This land is not inert and unknowing. This tree is not just there. It is animated and peopled by divine beings, these Orisha, dedicated particularly to it. Think about that. If you walk by a tree, by a rock, by whatever, and you think there is a knowing, sentient, representative essence of the divine in that entity, that is watching me, that knows I am here, that is expecting me to act with respect, to act with reverence, to notice. Niels Nielsen writes that these hundreds of Orisha reflect the omnipresent activity of the divine. Their presence creates an ongoing interaction between ourselves and the divine in a personal and immediate way. Hundreds of them in everything. To me, in thinking about this is qualitatively different. What we do here is we go out and we know the divine is in everything, right? And so our world is permeated with essences of the divine. But this is a bit different because each Orisha is a particularized, almost a personified essence of the divine in that element, in that piece of nature, in that person, in that article of clothing. It is aware of how we interact with it. It is waiting for us to be reverent, to notice, to thank it, to offer it, whatever. That is an energetically, to me, qualitatively different thing. Does that make sense? Some of the primary Orisha in the Ifa tradition are Isu, a trickster deity who generates confusion, but is also a protector. Ibeji, the deity of twins. The Yoruba have an emphasis on twins, and actually, I read this, is that the incidence of twins in the Yoruba people is much higher than in the general global population. Ogun, the god of iron, war, justice, and the chase. Orisa Nala, a senior Orisha who created the earth and humanity. Orunmila, the oracle divinity and the god of wisdom. Osanyin, the god of magic and medicine. Osun, the goddess of the river Osun. Oya, the goddess of the river Niger. Sapona, the divinity associated with smallpox. Every element, every aspect of your life is going to have an Orisha associated with it as an intercessory between us and the element of the divine that is present in that Orisha. In the Ifa tradition, the priests are dedicated not to Olorun, not to Olodumare, but to these individual Orisha. The next element that rounds out the circle of this cosmology is the essence called Ashe. Ashe, in addition to meaning, is an affirmation which really signifies Amen. But Ashe is the vital force, the energy that emanates from the Creator to animate and enliven all things. It's the essence of the divine that flows among us, that joins us, that generates our aliveness, that just animates us. Author Toby Malora Corial, in his book Finding Soul on the Path of Orisha, wrote it this way. He wrote, Ashe is the divine essential nature of all things. It is the life force that radiates and streams from the invisible realm to the realm of matter, between the Orisha and us, and between all that exists in creation. By filling the Orisha with Olorun's Ashe, Olodumare utilizes them to bring us a message. And this is what the message says. Wake up, pay attention. Alive all around you and inside of you is the sacred energy of the Supreme Being and me, the Creator. I, Olodumare, have channeled this divine source to my children, the Orisha, who flow it into everything on earth as I created. Open your eyes and you will realize that nowhere is God absent, that no being, place, or thing, visible or invisible, living or inanimate, is without holiness. Look closely and you will find something sacred everywhere and in everything. Witness with deep-seeing eyes, and you will see Ashe revealed through the personalities of my children, the Orisha. In that rock where God is breathing, in that city where God is vibrating, in those waters where God is speaking, and in your soul where God is alive. Isn't that wonderful imagery? Think about how we can walk through our day in that imagery, where everything around us is alive with the spirit of the divine. It kind of reminds me of the way all these traditions are so similar, and they just nourish each other. It reminds me of how Thomas Merton characterized us as all walking down the street shining like the sun. Everything is just shining like the sun, us and everything else, if only we can see with deep seeing eyes. As in the Native American tradition, the Yoruba religion recognizes a divinity and a creative power that permeates all of life and all of creation. Olorun is present in all things. And as we grow in wisdom, what happens to us? We become more able to see it, to experience this truth in all things. So when you are looking at these traditions, when you see practitioners appearing to worship that tree, that statue, that rock, that's not what they're doing. They are acknowledging and worshiping the divine energy that permeates that item, that connects all of us, that is present in all things. This view emphasizes the connection between the divine and our own human existence. Why? Because that tree, which is right there, planted in this earth, is the essence of the divine, as are we. And we recognize it. It's like namaste. The divine in me sees the divine in you. Whatever you is, that places us right here on earth, in these bodies, in whatever we are doing, in the midst of a divine scheme, where we have a place and a purpose to be, where we complete the circle. The divinity is not up there separate from us. It is here, here, and here, all around us and in us. Ifa teaches that the worship of the Orisha helps us in development of what they call Iwa Pele, our balanced character, our wisdom, and our attitude. That is the goal of this religious practice, to deepen our wisdom, to know that we are one with Olorun. And we do that through the practice of this faith tradition. Our purpose is to develop this balance and this enlightenment. The more enlightened one character becomes, the more our behavior is going to reflect the divine nature of who we are. Religion is the means. This practice is the means to develop this wisdom, this balance, this enlightenment. Okay. Baba Ifa Karade, a chief in the Yoruba tradition, writes, Yoruba is a divine journey to the inner self and to God consciousness. That's amazing. I mean, that is, it seems like every faith tradition I get up and talk about, that is at some point going to be the purpose. And that is what this particular set of tools, this particular cosmology, this particular theology teaches us. So how do they do it? That is the goal. What is the path this tradition gives us to reach that? And this is one of the things I wanted to focus on today. The path Ifa gives us to reach that awareness is the path of ritual. The path of ritual. Now, I've talked about rituals up here before because I think they're important, and that's one reason I like this tradition. Ritual is central to Ifa practice, and the purpose of it is more than to worship this particular Orisha or to worship Olorun. The point is to transform yourself, to elevate yourself. The performance of the ritual opens the practitioner up, opens the practitioner's heart up to the ashe that is present in that moment. What is the key to any ritual that we do? It is intention, right? It is awareness. It is reverence. It is humility. When you bring those qualities to this practice, the ritual becomes our means to access our connection with the divine, by whatever name you call it. That is the power of ritual. It places us in the creative process. It takes us out of just observing life going by, observing ourselves being just elements in life, victims of life, if you were. It gives us power, it gives us intention, it gives us control, and it gives us a center, knowing that we are involved in the creative process of every aspect of our lives. John S. Mbiti writes, rituals make us no longer passive beings in the cosmos, but we become creative agents of existence. And as we go through this, think about the rituals in your own life, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Think about the rituals you do in your own life and how they transform the energies of your days. Ifa use ritual in connection with worship of the Orisha. They include daily ritual worship at home before one's shrine. This is the way that works. This is the way it was described in one of the resources I read. The worshiper stands before the shrine, invokes the name of the Orisha that he is devoting his attention to, and invites him or her to be present, just as we invited in the energies of the four directions. The worshiper may shake a rattle to get the Orisha's attention. I'm here, okay? A libation is poured on the ground or on the shrine, and the help of the Orisha is invoked. So community worship is going to be more elaborate, it's going to be more celebratory, there's going to be food and drink and gifts exchanged. It's going to be more of a community event. Community rituals might celebrate coming of age, marriage, birth, death, and they have particular rituals for each of these events. In the Ifa tradition, when a person dies, the first rite is to sacrifice a fowl, as this is believed to make the road easier for the deceased. A meal is prepared, laid at the feet of the deceased. When the deceased is lowered into the ground for burial, family members gather around and each offers a gift, asking that the deceased not sleep in the other world, but remain awake and help his or her children in this world. Because for the Yoruba, death is not the end of life, but a means by which our earthly life is just exchanged for another existence. Look at that. Think about going through the grief process. Think about having just lost a loved one. And that is what a difference a ritual like that would make in terms of your processing of that event. You have honored the deceased. You have fed the deceased. You have asked that ancestor to stay here and help you and be present. That is what ritual can do for us. Involve us in these events, give us some control over these events, help us in our healing, and help us to understand what is going on and process what is going on. These rituals are not a means to placate the gods, but are a means of personal and inner healing and transformation. Karabe writes, as novices begin to seriously contemplate Yoruba as a religion, it is important to understand the importance of ritual. And this speaks to us, this next sentence. All too often, the misconception is that academic research and passive involvement are sufficient. What's that image we use there? We have two doors, learning about God and God. Which one would we pick? Ooh, this one seems safer. This one, who knows what might happen? But you got to go through that one to transform and awaken. Following a course is better than flowing with the essence of worship eternalized. No, it's not just reading, it's not just study. If we do that, the result is the production of a less than open mind and spirit. Rituals performed must serve to open the devotee and make him or her more receptive to the ashe of the teachers, the ancestors, and the Orisha. The ritual is seen as spiritual and is done to bring about the cleansing and heightening of the spirit. That's the point. Have you heard it said in the Christian tradition that prayer is not for God, prayer is for us? These rituals are for us. Think about that. What a wonderful, expansive way to think of ritual. So many of us have walked out of traditional houses of worship. Why? Because we're just going through the motions, right? We stand up, we sit down, we pray, we do this, and it's just not filled with life. If we do our rituals with intention, with humility, with reverence, we can infuse them with that life that makes them meaningful for us. When we fail to know that, when we fail to do that, we risk abandoning the richness that intentional ritual can give us. And it doesn't have to be a ritual somebody else prescribes. It can be one we create, and probably some of the most meaningful ones are the ones we create. What if we could gift ourselves with practices that sharpen and that illuminate the important moments and passages in our lives? If we could celebrate and share those moments and events with awareness and meaning, calling in the presence of the divine to highlight the sacred nature of events which otherwise might just go by. You know, it's funny, when I do celebrations of life, we do them with intention and focus and reverence and meaning, as opposed to just reading a liturgy. And people will come up and they'll say that it was and it's not just me, that it was a profoundly meaningful event. We can take these moments and create transitions that matter, transitions that help us through. Hi, honey bun.
Hello, Mom.
Okay. If we looked, what if we looked at the presence of ritual in our lives as the Ifa do? To elevate our spirits, to bring us into closer alignment with the divine around us, and to celebrate the divine in every aspect of our lives. To recognize the timeless nature of the passages that we celebrate, as our ancestors did, as our children will. Gay and David Williamson write that rituals are a vehicle to help us experience inner and outer transformation. Entered into in a highly conscious and meaningful way, rituals can help enhance one's spirituality, provide an opening to a new sense of self-worth, and provide healing during times of change. Think about the rituals in our lives. What's one? Saying grace, right? When you read lists of how to infuse spirituality into your life, into how to make your moments of your life more meaningful, that is one that a lot of people recommend. Just take a moment before you eat food. Give thanks for it. Thank the energies that brought it to you. Just take that moment and be aware. Beginning the day with a moment to pray, to meditate, to connect. I don't know about you, but that makes a huge difference in my day. If I jump up and I just have to start rushing, my day is qualitatively different. Have you all found that also? Just taking a minute and setting your intention, thanking the energies, thanking God, thanking whomever for giving you another day to bring your gifts to this world is a meaningful thing, even if you only do it for 5 minutes. The things we do here, the burning bowl, the white stone, what are those? Those are rituals that help us release what has kept us back, that help us open up, empty, to accept the new, to hear our new name, to move into what is next. The year would pass whether we did that or not. But aren't the years better when we do it with intention and focus and meaning? Rites of passage. As I was preparing for this, I was reading a story about a lady whose 13-year-old son was going through puberty, and he started talking about all these risky behaviors that he wanted to engage in. He wanted to jump out of planes. He wanted to, experiment. I know, okay, well, maybe that's not so risky.
No.
He wanted to...
Timothy, you're describing.
Yeah, he wanted to start experimenting with drugs. He wanted to do something. And finally she realized that he was becoming a man. And he needed some passage, some ceremony, something where his community recognized that. And recognized that he was leaving childhood, he was transitioning, and he was becoming a man. There was nothing for him that was already created. So the family took him to a large parking lot, put him behind the wheel of the car, and said, "You are now a man, you can drive. You will steer your own ship." And so the kid just drove around the parking lot. But it was his way of transitioning, his way of knowing that his family had recognized that transition and saw him in a new light. That was his particular rite of passage. Now, these rituals may not have been passed down to us. We need to make up our own ingenuity and come up with them. House blessings, baby blessings. There's ceremonies to commemorate a divorce, a separation of this new couple and each, or an old couple, and each going their own way. Blessing each other with friendship and love and memory and wishing each other well. Think about these moments in your lives that might benefit from these aware transitions. So there is one that I read about. This is the book by Gay and David Williamson. It's called Transformative Rituals. And I want to close just describing one. And I want you to think about this and how this simple practice can change the energy of a discussion. They have a ceremony in here that they call Heart to Heart. Has anybody heard of it? Okay, so when you're going to have a family discussion, when you're going to have a group discussion, whatever, barriers are up, People can be defensive. People can anticipate what the other person's going to say. You can start having fights with somebody before you're even in the room with them. Haven't you noticed? It's a gift. Okay. So what she does is she gets everybody in a circle, and she starts with just a moment of centering, a moment of breathing, a moment of intentional focus, and then she takes out a heart-shaped object. It can even be a stuffed heart. It doesn't matter. It's a heart-shaped object. And what she does is that object goes around the circle. You can only talk if you are holding it. If you are listening to the person who is holding the heart-shaped object, the heart, you listen, you look at them, you give them your full attention, and you focus on what they are saying, because you can't talk yet. And it circles around, and there's something about the energy of holding this item that permits you, and I can just feel the energy as I think about it, that permits you to open up your heart, to communicate honestly, because it is a safe space, and everybody in that circle has made the commitment to listen to you with love. She gives the example of her two kids, Kaylee and Jonah, I think their names were. And Jonah was a little bit older. He was like 11, and Kaylee was like 5. And at school, when the kids were lining up to go outside, Kaylee would go stand next to Jonah because he was her brother, and she loved him. Jonah was having none of this because he was a big kid. He didn't want his sister hanging around, and so he would keep telling her to get lost. So they had a heart-to-heart circle to talk about it. And as Kaylee was holding the heart, she looked at Jonah and she said, "Jonah, the reason I like to sit with you is because you're my brother and I love you so much." And it just totally changed the energy. And since then, he's like, "Where's Kaylee?" You know, because it was just a safe and a loving, ritualized way to communicate the emotions deeply held. There are others in this book, and I'll certainly let you look at them. There are wonderful rituals. But I guess what I'm suggesting is we are so benefited by being aware of these moments in our lives, by creating oases of awareness, by creating practices that give us permission to bring the sacred into them, however we conceive to do it. So what I'd like us to do, I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop, but what I'd like us to do in the week that's coming up is just think about these rituals in our lives. Think about the moments in our lives that we would like to bring to our awareness, that we would like to highlight with the sacred that is in them. Because there are so many. And we here in the West move so fast. And we blow by them. And we miss them forever. So let's bring that awareness. Let's bring the awareness of these moments to our daily practices, the power of ritual in our own lives, to elevate us, to raise us up to that level of greater awareness, and bring that richness to our own lives. So let's take these thoughts into meditation.